Welcome back to Chains of Addiction. I'm Max. Today we're going to be playing a little bit with this home light that I picked up. If you saw the I'm going to build a saw video, then you've already seen this saw. If not, I picked this up the other day. I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace. Guy had it locally. He had it for a good price. It's in really good shape. But there were some kind of glaring issues with the saw right off the bat. First of all, it had a original 16-inch home light bar on it, which is awesome. But this is a 3/8 pitch saw. I mean, the bar was a 3/8 bar, the sprocket is a 3/8 sprocket, and it had a 1/4 pitch chain on it. So that doesn't really work very well. Second of all, the guy told me that the primer didn't work. Well, this saw doesn't have a primer. It has a manual oiler button. So that was kind of a glaring red flag right there. He also told me that it would start just fine without a choke. And I thought, boy, it's probably running pretty rich then. And when I started it up without a choke, yeah, it smoked like crazy. We're gonna go through a couple of buying an old saw tips and tricks and just some things to look over. And then we're going to tune this thing up and play with it. So I have not touched this saw since I bought it, other than to swap on this bar. This is actually a steel bar. I had a 20-inch bar for this, but I couldn't find the chain for it, and it was just a lot easier for me to swap on the steel bar. Not a big deal. I'll cover that some other time. And I pulled the air cleaner off here, which gave me a little bit of insight into this saw. I believe that somebody ran it at some point without a air cleaner on it at all, because this entire area in here, the top of the carb and the bottom of the air box, all had sawdust and gunk in it, you know, like the stuff that you find on the tailgate after you've been cutting wood. So I cleaned all that out really well with a can of brake clean and an air compressor and even some Q-tips. I went that far. Now it looks great. I have literally run this saw for about 20 seconds. So you're gonna come right along for the ride with me. And the only other thing that I've done to this thing since I got it is I just cleaned out underneath the clutch cover because I was under there anyway. So, but overall, I don't think this saw has been run very much at all, considering that it's probably from the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. So let's see how it runs. A couple things about this saw real quick. I looked it up last night. I believe they made these from 1964 until the very late 70s or the early 80s. I think it was 82 even. Home Light XL12. It is a manual oiler only, so there is no automatic oiler, which means you'll be pressing this button over and over and over and over again. These were a 54.3 cc saw, and it is a reed valve saw, which we'll cover in a different video, but that's a different type of saw. These were known to be very, very strong for how big a saw they were. And I have to say that picking it up, it is heavy for how big a saw it is, but it's not bad. It feels pretty nimble, pretty agile. So I'm real excited to run this thing, but I know that the carb is tuned terribly right now. So I'm gonna try pulling on it right now. I did swap out, I dumped out the old gas. It looked terrible. I think the guy had it mixed really badly as well. And I put in some of my own gas, so that should help. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave the choke in and see how it goes. High idle. Well, maybe I'll try it with the choke. Huh.
Hey Max, that didn't work out, but I got something for you.
Where'd you get that?
I bought it a few weeks ago.
You've been holding out on
I
it.
have replaced the Dalmar.
If you have to give that
I
one
have
back.
to give that one back. That's right.
And it looks like somebody who knew how to sharpen a chain, so maybe it's in decent shape.
Said, haven't even checked it over yet, so you
Chain
can check
breaker.
it over and
Oh, the chain is way too tight. All right. So I just want to point out that was actually pretty much legitimate. Like, I was gonna play with the home light today, and it didn't work out. So Danny was like, "Hey, I've got this," and I really didn't know he had it. So that's kind of cool. That'll work. So we're kind of gonna go through the same steps. First of all, I'm gonna pull off this air cleaner. Oh, it slides up of all things. Wow. That freaking air cleaner is dirty. Like really dirty. Man. So glad we looked at that. And rest assured I will blow this thing out at a later date. This is just kind of a cursory inspection. One thing to always check on these steels is, come in close on this. Right here, this is your breather for your gas tank, and then here, this lever and mechanism is your kill switch and your choke. So these are plastic on most of these steels, this whole lever mechanism, and they will break, and sometimes this bracket that holds it will break. And you want to make sure that the little metal contact for the kill switch is relatively clean and intact. Otherwise, you won't be able to shut the thing off. So all that is dirty, but it's there and seems like it's probably going to work. I'm going to pull the spark plug on this thing real quick. These steels have 2 screws. Oh, those are tight. Wow. And the screws should be captive in the air filter. Yeah, so they don't fall out. On these steels, underneath the carb here, this black line, that is your fuel line. And they're, a lot of saws use a generic small diameter fuel line. The steels have a form-fitted fuel line that seals to the top of the tank, and they have a tendency to crack right there. This one seems to be okay. It's kind of hard to tell with how dirty it is, but I think it's going to be okay. But that's something that we'll definitely have to look at if we have problems starting it. So Danny said that he just bought it because it was such a good price. He found it at a yard sale that was just a random stop. So I'm going to pull the plug and just see what it looks like. A lot of times you can get a pretty good idea. Wow, that's tight. There we go. You don't need to put your spark plugs that tight. A lot of times you can get a pretty good idea of how somebody's treated their saw from simple things like the air filter and the spark plug, and how the saw's been running from the spark plug. This is a really awkward spark plug position. So that looks fine, actually, for a two-stroke. It's not super brown, it's not super dark and oily. It's probably fine. It might be running a little bit on the rich side, but it probably runs fine. And it's a good Bosch plug, so that's great too. Why is everything so tight on this saw? This is terrible. Oh, thought I broke the screwdriver. My last step for a simple startup on an unknown saw is going to be to take off the clutch cover, check out the bar and chain, check out the clutch, see what all's going on in there. Well, that was loose. The one thing that really should be tight is not. That's kind of hilarious. I'm losing confidence in the previous owner of this saw, let me tell you. Good news is that the oiler is clear and the oiler hole in the bar is clear. We like that. Chain brakes on. The clutch spins fine. The sprocket is a little worn, but nothing bad. This all could use a bit of a cleaning, but I'm getting anxious. I want to see if it runs. Gas smells good, actually. It smells real good. I'm going to put the air cleaner back on because there's a lot of dust and crap right around the carburetor, and I don't really want to suck any of that in. So I'll put this guy back on real quick. That's kind of cool. We're on choke. Let's see what happens. Well, that's a good sign. Put it on half choke. I think we'll throw I know we've got a couple of good 20-inch steel chains around here. We're laughing about that because for an entire summer, both Danny and I ran almost exclusively 20-inch steel. So we got quite a bit of that laying around. So many people make their chains way too tight. Friction creates heat, and heat is the enemy of efficiency. So, obviously that's a little on the loose side right at the moment, but I'm going to tighten it up. I do like, a lot of the older saws have the chain adjuster on the front, which is actually really annoying to deal with. And these steels especially, being right in between the bar nuts, man, that is a nice location. Okay, so I'm going to tighten it up basically to the bottom of the bar. And now I'm going to lift, see how much that chain drops. So lift the tip of the bar up and tighten it just a little bit more. I do like to spin my chains throughout this process, make sure that it's still moving freely. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to tighten the front bar nut up, and then once that is tight, make sure it's still moving freely, which it is. Tighten the rear bar nut up. Perfect. And then, as previously stated in one of my videos, it is a very good idea to start the saw for a second and make sure that the chain isn't like off the sprocket or anything like that. Let me run it a little, Rich. Run it a little bit and see. It's definitely running a little, Rich. Still Rich. That's pretty good. So you can see, great garage sale find, good one, Danny. For very little money, you can have a very pleasant cutting experience. A lot of that comes down to the chain on a saw like this. This is not a hugely powerful saw, and having a chain that is good and sharp and cuts fibers efficiently makes a huge difference on something like this. But fantastic deal. That'll make a great cutter. We probably need to do a little bit of fine tuning on the carb, but it cuts pretty good as it is. If you're interested in this kind of junk, consider subscribing, and thanks for stopping by.